Well, folks, here we go. Week 3 of the NFL preseason is finally here. The last week, the last tune-up right before the 2023 campaign begins. No, it was only 3 games now. It's not 4. They changed that. Yes, they changed that.
Playing like 4 times.
Don't worry. Look at some college football right before the big boys play in a couple of weeks. Okay, folks, here we go. Week 3. I'm your host, Barry Barnes, founder and CEO of LockerReport.com, and also your host here at the LockerTalk podcast, where you guys will find out about NFL stars of tomorrow today. Now, I have to say this, I'm in trouble with my guy. I'll call him W. Clemens. Mr. Clemens been giving me advice for some good music to play in the background for the past, couple of months now. And I did not give him a shout out about a breakdown of music that he put down. So, Mr. Clemens, when you see me, please don't beat me up. I'm giving you your respect right now. And I thank you for this sound that you gave me. A great suggestion. You gave me some good ones too that I will reveal during the course of the week. But good suggestion right here. You can never go wrong with the beat nuts. Don't kill me, Mr. Clemens, when you see me. I'm giving you a due now. Thank you so much. Hey, speaking solely on the players who have gone through the undrafted process. Yes, the undrafted process in the NFL. Something that's pretty much overlooked, not highly talked about, but they have a space here on this show, and eventually it will become good news where everybody can start talking about it and really putting more emphasis on it. I recognize that more commentators are talking about highly of undrafted players and everything as far as how they do in the field, which is a good thing. But this right here is a show where it's going to solely be a show strictly for them. And it's the same thing for you, football lovers who love football, who's always trying to find an edge. Get your NFL knowledge up. And also, if you're into fantasy, you probably discover a couple of players here or two, from this process. So anyway, that's what this whole thing is all about. And we're going to talk about not only just some players to watch out for while we're put in the category of roster busters. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But I want to talk about the preseason. And the preseason is very dear to me and shucks anybody who loves football. And there's always this big notion basically saying that the preseason does not mean anything, which it does. As a matter of fact, the preseason matters sincerely. And when you talk about the preseason, for those who have what I consider a competitive drive, those who are competitive know that the preseason is meaningful. Those who had to compete, or better yet, had to work towards something. Those who had to sacrifice, those who did not have a silver spoon, stuff that was not given to them. Those individuals that had stuff given to them that do not have necessarily a competitive drive won't get the point and emphasis of the preseason. But those who are competitive by nature, those who know what it is to lose something or not to have something, and only to achieve greatness, they know that this is a process that the NFL has, that they truly respect. And that's where it matters for the preseason part when you're dealing with the National Football League. And the National Football League with the preseason is all about evaluation. All about evaluations. And this evaluation umbrella covers a lot of things. Let's start first of all with the coaches. Now, each year we always find out about a new coach going here or sign with another team. You know how what they say in the NFL was called Black Monday. Right after the last regular season game is over, that Monday they have coaches that get fired across the league. And so with that being said, new head coaches, and then some coaches that already been established with teams, they have position coaches that come in. And that's new to their program, new to their system. And so all through training camp and all through, better effect, before training camp with the OTAs and meetings they have, leading up to training camp, and then to get on the field, this is another evaluation process to see how these new coaches are going to react in certain situations. How they're going to react to the players that they have on the team. Many of these players are new to them. Some may be familiar with them, but it's still an evaluation process for these new coaches to be in this atmosphere with players. And if you're a coach that came from the collegiate ranks and now you're in the NFL, it's a different mentality when you're talking to players who's worrying about passing their grade, or probably having, I would say, struggling to try to, make that get a meal. Big time schools don't have to worry about that, but worrying about their grades, missing their family back home, probably miss their girlfriend and all kinds of stuff, all this stuff in their mind. And then they go to the NFL and they dealing with grown men that's dealing with grown men issues that have families, and then you having guys that's trying to play for a certain contract. So these are two type of mental mindsets that these new coaches, if they come from the coaching ranks to the professional level, they have to get used to. So that says a lot for those guys to make their adjustment, and they're being evaluated as well. And then the situation on the football, what kind of plays they're going to make, what they're going to call on the field, how they're going to communicate with every player on the team. For every player, you can't approach every player the same exact way. Some guys, you gotta raise your voice at them. Some guys, you better not raise their voice at them. Some guys, you gotta pat on the back. Some guys, you gotta encourage. Some guys, you gotta be hard on. Every person on that sideline has different temperaments, and these coaches have to get adjusted in game time situations. So for that evaluation, for us coaches, the preseason means a lot. I'm gonna give you another. Officiating. Officiating, this is something I know personally from my time in covering the officials with the NFL, with the front office of the NFL. So I'm pretty much familiar with this. Know that each year after they go to the development program, officiating development program, how they are looking for new officials to come in. And then those young officials, they have to finally get their training on an NFL level. Although they have many years of officiating big-time games on the collegiate level, getting to the NFL is definitely a different atmosphere. And so they have to get these guys involved, get these guys acclimated, not only do the mini clinics and the officiating clinic they have every July, but when it's time to get on the game, they will get that opportunity to go to training camp with certain teams to get a feel there. But it's totally different during game time. So these new officials, and also they try to work out some other different rules and things like that for us officiating to be able to keep the game in bounds, I would say. And so they have to get used to that atmosphere during the game time situations so that they will know how to officiate. Fortunately for the officials, they pretty much have certain zone areas where they have to monitor. So you don't have to worry about one official trying to examine the entire field. They pretty much have their areas where they have helped them to actually have a good focus to make sure that the plays and the players are in bounds with the rules on the field. So they have to get acclimated with that. And then at the same time, that the coaches, they're going to give these new officials and mess with some of the veterans, be in their ear. They have to get used to that part of the atmosphere. All this stuff happens in the preseason to get them ready for the regular season. So that's another part of evaluation that you guys probably don't even recognize or realize. Now, here we go. Falls with the players. It kind of like vexed my spirit when I hear so-called football people just dismiss the preseason. And don't worry, how that there's nothing demonic about that. You know how your church folks get when y'all see something that you're familiar with. So that was a clip somewhere else. So let's chill out. Everyone knows that when it comes down to players on the field, that this game means something to them. And like I said in the beginning part of the show, those who are not competitive by nature, those who never had to fight for anything, those who don't understand the process, and looking at what is being said with with the networks and NFL networks and all these other telecasts that talks about the preseason and how they tend to dismiss it, that really bothers me, to a degree that yes, for stat wise, yes, it does not mean anything. Don't say that to the Baltimore Ravens, who just had their 24-game winning streak in the preseason, broken by the Washington Commanders. We'll talk about that later. That was a very, very exciting game, especially those who truly love football. But when it comes down to the preseason, to see how it's dismissed across the board because it don't add up to stats, it's totally disrespectful. I don't even know why most of those guys that have jobs will try to sound bigger than what they really are. But the preseason means everything to a lot of men out there and a lot of people, especially those who are competitive. And competitive by nature, every person on that sideline, every person in that field is sincerely competitive. I'm just going to start off with this great speech or layout from one of my favorite coaches in the National Football League, and Baltimore Ravens head coach John Harbaugh.
Preseason games that people want to write about, some of you in here want to write about and say they don't mean anything because you never played the game. You never were out there in a preseason game. You never were fighting for a spot on the team. And yet you have the audacity to say that the effort that somebody puts into that to win and fight and win a game like that is meaningless. Tell me it was meaningless out there what you just saw. If you like football, is that a meaningless football game? You know, I can't respect anybody that says that.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Coach Harbaugh. Thank you for laying that out. I mean, it's, you know, like I said, it just really burns me up. And then being inside the room, you know, being inside of the room of a conference when you're ready to, you know, address the coach. And I understand now, this is where it goes out. This is how it's set up, folks, for those who don't know. Let me take you behind the curtain, so to speak, of what goes on in these press conferences. Now, technically, your big networks or your local network stations, the bigger names, they tend to have to go first to ask their questions. Then after that, that's when you have your local guys or people that's trying to make it in the business. And this is where about more than half the room of the reporters that's covering the game that don't know the game of football at all. I know this personally. It just makes you want to just choke them. It's like, you know, get them out of here. The part that drives me crazy is that after they hear one question from what a network wants to have, the network want their guys to ask the obvious questions. Get that out first. And then from that question, then you have reporters that's going to ask the same question in the same vein, but change the words around to make it sound really different. And I'm quite for sure that was the point where John Harbaugh had just let out what he wanted to say. Based off of that, I guarantee it was not the first question when someone asked about their question about that game and how that game was meaningful. I'm quite for sure it came from somebody coming from behind, someone else trying to make themselves relevant, and then all of a sudden just come out with a dumb question that many reporters ask. And I know that it's important to ask the obvious questions, but when you keep coming back saying the same old thing and you're not really giving a coach a good football question, that can be really irritating. It irritates me, so I definitely know it irritates coaches. So applaud Coach Harbaugh for saying that. Now, anyway, back to why it's important. Here goes a couple of things that talks about the importance of what the preseason does for players. It actually helps develop discipline. Yes, discipline. The reason why I say with discipline, because with these players, especially these undrafted players that's going in, they know that they have certain bedtime. They know that they have to be disciplined in their diet, in their rest, in their workouts, in order to make that squad leading up to that preseason to see what they're going to do in the field. It requires discipline so they will know what they have to do so they can be able to have that competitive edge to win a roster spot. Another thing to watch out for, accountability. It brings accountability on the field. If you know your assignments, you're a wide receiver, you know your route combinations. O-lineman, you know what you have to call out. Defenses, you know what schemes you're in. You got to know you have to be in place. You know, with defensive backs, you got to recognize, okay, who you're going up against. It requires accountability all across the board to see what these men are trying to achieve. All 32 teams. Their desire is to get to the Super Bowl. Now, everybody knows that all 32 teams are not, you know, there yet to win the Super Bowl. But however, that is the goal, to get to the Super Bowl. And the preseason helped develop their accountability from every man from the sideline, and especially those who are on the field. Another thing, it creates that drive, that hunger. When you see these players go on the field, they are driven to try to take someone's spot. They're driven to make sure they have an opportunity to make that roster. And no one knows it better than the players that been overlooked, had to go to certain leagues and to get to the NFL. And then when they finally got enough information, better yet, enough tape, and also develop their skill set, okay, they have a chance to really get out there and showcase. You have to realize, for the 3 weeks of the preseason, this is like 3 weeks of the Super Bowl. Imagine the Super Bowl for 3 weeks. That's what this preseason is for many of those players. And then at the same time with the veterans, yes, you don't see a lot of the veterans playing on the field, but they are engaged on the sideline, especially those quarterbacks, because they're engaged, because they want to make sure that when they get on the field, the guys that's trying to play, that's out there putting a viable winning product on the field, they want to be involved too. Don't think that all the veteran guys are not involved because you see them on the sideline, when talking, laughing it up, spitting out sunflower seeds, they're like they're not paying attention. For the most part, they really are paying attention, because they want to know who they about to go up on the field with and fight to try to get to that next level. So yes, they are paying attention, and it definitely means something to them. Another thing, other than evaluation, it really shows a true reaction, how they really will react in game time situation. Yes, the preseason, you hear people always talking about, yeah, so-and-so looked pretty good in training camp. Oh, yeah, he was flying around the field. Yeah, everybody looked good in shorts. So what? Yes, it does it serve a purpose? Yes, it does. But don't bank your whole season off doing bank the season off based off of what players are doing in shorts and in helmets, not really getting that contact on the field, because the whole thing in training camp, yes, you want to work through it, but at the same time, you want to get through it in a healthy manner. I get it. Trust me, I do. But going off of what they're doing in training camp and flying around, running all these routes, because it's a different atmosphere when you get another grown man that put their hands on you. Yeah, you may come out looking all sharp in the first quarter, and you keep getting tagged, and then the second quarter comes, and then the third quarter, you're not going to be moving like you was in the first quarter, and then the fourth quarter comes. Oh boy, you probably huffing and puffing if you didn't require the discipline and accountability and the drive that you supposed to have during the preseason. And then during the course of a 17-week season, okay, we will see all that good showing off stuff you did in shorts during the training camp. Okay, we will see where you at now. Okay, so don't bank your season off of that. It's nothing like getting out there and getting touched, getting tagged, to really get implemented with what the NFL season is. Because if you know football like I do, there are different speeds during the course of the season. You have your preseason speed, your first half of the season, regular season speed, then you get your mid-season speed. Oh God, November and December, it get even faster. Postseason, there's a whole new level of speed for that, folks. Super Bowl, oh my goodness, it's more like blur speed at that time. So there's different levels of speed that the players have to get familiar with and get set up for, and the preseason helps them with that. And of course, the motivation, folks. All of this comes down to motivation for these players to get out there to show what they can do, to make that roster spot so they can be able to live their dreams and also help provide a generational worth for their families, and to get out there and play the game they love and that we all love to watch and witness. So this is what the purpose of the preseason is. There's some other things, but it's pretty much covered that whole umbrella that was just laid out. So stop saying that the preseason don't mean anything, because it does. If you're really into football and you really love football and the evaluation process, is it the same scale of play during the regular season? We all know that it's not. But look at it for individuals. Look at it for hungers. Look at it for the great stories that the networks put out with these players. I really enjoy the stories that they tell about these young men trying to get there. It's nothing like it in the world. So kudos to the networks that really highlight that. That's a really awesome thing. I give y'all guys applause for that. So make sure you guys stop dismissing the preseason. Preseason is awesome. Make sure you guys tune in next week, where we talk about the overall process of the undrafted players. We know that several undrafted players have gotten released. Not going to talk about that this week, but next week we're going to get into it. You're going to watch that 53-man roster and also that practice squad that get put together. We're going to talk about the numbers of the undrafted players, where they fall at by positions, so you guys can be recognized. We're going to talk about who's going to be the starters, everything. We're going to break down all kinds of stuff dealing with the undrafted players when we move forward to the 2023 NFL campaign. I hope that you guys find the show informative. Make sure you guys put in some comments down there. It's also a certain song you want to hear play in the background. Anything you want to know about some undrafted players that's with your team. Now again, make sure you guys tune in next week. We're going to get all this good breakdown of these undrafted players. We about to have some fun. Let's enjoy this season. Woohoo!